I was starting to feel overwhelmed, and the lines of real life and online life were kind of starting to blur. I was becoming overwhelmed and also not present in real life. These apps are designed to have your attention. Your attention is money to them, essentially. When you go into these apps, the likes of Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, audience retention is their main goal. So they're going to keep serving you things you're engaging with, whether that's positive or negative. You can easily end up in this digital vortex of just ugh. I was kind of oversharing. I was feeling irritated. I would be kind of scrolling online, and it got to the point where I was looking at my screen time, and I'm like, okay, you spent 4 hours on Instagram. You could have read a book in 4 hours, or you could have went on a hike, or you could have had a meal with a friend for those 4 hours. So I think we can kind of beat ourselves up over screen time.
The goal of Newsfeed is to connect people to content that is both relevant and meaningful. And we know that people want to have a positive and very intentional experience on Facebook. We take feedback from people who use our services, as well as working with mental health experts and organisations to inform product design and to inform the kind of tools that we build to give people control. The activity dashboard tells people the average amount of time they're spending on Facebook or Instagram. But not alone that, it also gives people the control to manage their time spent. We also enable people to manage their notifications and to mute notifications, and so that doesn't act as a distraction or maybe a temptation to open up the app, because we appreciate that people want to be able to control their experience and find that balance between getting the content that they like and that's relevant and that's intentional versus that kind of mindless scrolling as well.
My Google search was how many people have died today? Why would you Google that? But obviously my brain was after becoming conditioned from news, media, what was showing up on my feed, how many cases were there, and I was doom scrolling. I was actively seeking this information.
I've always loved technology. I spent a big part of my career working in technology, so in tech consulting, in big data and analytics. And I was also an early adopter, one of the first people in my office to have a smartphone, one of the first people to have an iPad. And initially I thought that was a really positive thing, but over time I started to see a bit of a negative impact, a bit of a challenge on my own productivity and my well-being. And then around 2010 I actually changed sector. I moved across to the not-for-profit for a few years. And during that time, one of my projects was 18 months working in India. And for a lot of that time, I was actually working off the grid. And it was almost as if, along with my day job, I had this social experiment of what it was like having been 24/7 on to all of a sudden be off the grid. I came back to Ireland. I started to work with psychologists and neuroscientists, and that was really the seeds for Unplug, just building on the science that shows if we make some small changes in how we use technology, we can have some really positive impacts on our productivity and our well-being.
With people working from home and with businesses having not clear, and it's quite new to have a digital policy maybe in some businesses, is actually setting that I can't reply to emails after 7, or I don't reply to emails after 7, and just leave it at that. Now I make sure, instead of having to burn myself out and take a long break to recover, I try and take consistent breaks online. I don't actually have apps on my phone. I think it's good to kind of have that awareness and just be like, okay, I'm going to step out for a minute. I'm going to pop the phone down, remove some apps, and just escape that kind of bubble which it can feel like, and then come into the real world and be like, oh, actually, it's not as noisy here.